Now, we just heard earlier Jagmeet Singh, the NDP leader, saying that the EI measures aren't enough. Do you agree with him?
I agree that they're not enough in the sense that they are not going to do very much to encourage people who should be taking a sick leave.
Ding dong YouTube, welcome back to the channel. I'm the Jobless Coder, and today I wanted to talk about job security because I still think a great deal of people are not seeing the larger picture here. Exactly what this illness is going to cause, the damage it has and will be causing. I've been saying it now for over a year. Job security is done. It's over. It's finished. End of story. Bye-bye. I was arguing yesterday with quite a few people who were telling me about employment insurance and how, oh, the government's gonna save us, the government's gonna pay my bills. I want to direct everyone to this article here because it says, study says few workers have paid leave or qualify for EI due to COVID-19. The research note from the Canadian Centre of Policy Alternatives says 38% of sickness leave and 23% of family leave for more than a week was covered by employers in 2019. So, not everyone is going to qualify for EI. In fact, more than half of the working class people in this country will not qualify for employment insurance. This is everyone who is self-employed and has not paid into employment insurance, because it is optional if you're self-employed. This is all the contract workers who did not pay into employment insurance. This is every single person who is working in the gig economy, and there are a lot of people in the gig economy that will not get money from the government. Here's a question. What is supposed to happen when 100,000 people across the country all lose their job at the same time? What about 1 million people? What happens when 1 million people lose their job and all apply for employment insurance at the same time? I don't think the system can support that. If you still think that the government is going to save you, you need to stop. Because it is not a solution. I wonder where in the frick all this money's supposed to come from? What happens if this goes on for 2 or 3 months? Maybe, and I don't know for certain, but maybe the employment insurance is there and it can cover a large number of people for a week, or maybe even 2 weeks or a month. But what happens if this goes on for 5 or 6 months? Do you really expect the government to pay every single person that is going to lose their job 6 months worth of wages? Take a look at this next article here. Coronavirus. CIBC to modify hours closed some branches beginning Wednesday. It says that the bank says that 816 of its locations will remain open, but 206 are going to close. So they're already starting to close the banks for any over-the-counter cash transactions. So what happens when they close all the banks? What happens to grandma who doesn't have online banking or PayPal or a credit card? She relies on over-the-counter cash from the bank to buy her groceries and to pay her rent. What happens when grandma can't pay her rent because she can't go to the bank because they're all closed and now grandma's homeless? Do you really want to see grandma homeless? I don't think people are seeing the larger picture here. What about all the employees who work for the bank? What happens when they can't come into work because all the banks are closed and then they get fired? Employment insurance might cover you, like I said, but for a large number of people, it's not. And even if you get employment insurance, even if you qualify for EI, you only get 55% of what your normal wages would typically be. It is basically pennies on the dollar. You will not be able to cover your rent if you have budgeted every last dime of your paycheck to phone bills, to rent, to cover food. Now you're going to get half of the pay you would usually receive, and you're expected to somehow budget the entire life expenses on half of what you normally receive. Now, having lost my job last year and actually knowing what it's like to have your paycheck go out the window, I know that it is nearly impossible to take what you were usually spending and cut that in half, and then cut that in half again, and continue to cut it in half until you have $0 left. Your savings, your life saving is going to go down and down and down until it is completely gone. In fact, there's another article here. Now, this one actually scares me, and I'll tell you why it scares me. Ontario workers won't lose their job if forced to stay home due to COVID-19, the government says. This is very, very terrifying because a lot of people now believe that they are not going to lose their job because the government says they're not going to lose their job. Let me tell you something. Let me be very frank. Your boss is not going to have a choice when his business goes bankrupt because nobody is buying. Nobody's coming into his store. He's shut down. He can't pay his rent. He can't pay his overhead bills. He's not going to have a choice but to fire everyone when he goes bankrupt. Now, I mean, it says here, if people don't stay at home in effort of social distancing, the virus will spread so quickly that too many people would need urgent medical care at once. This is a problem. Being stuck between a rock and a hard place. Yes, I understand the severity of this illness. Yes, people are going to die and people are going to suffer. But if 1 million people lose their jobs because their employers go bankrupt, you look at all of the restaurants, all of the mom and pop stores that this nation relies on. They are literally on the verge of bankruptcy as it is. We have been in the worst economic times in a very long time, and these businesses were already struggling. And now you throw this into the mix, they're going to go bankrupt. And you think the government is going to stand there and tell them, well, you're not allowed to fire all your employees? What are they going to do, arrest your boss because he went bankrupt? It's an illusion that they've tried to sell you. They've tried to reassure you that you're not going to lose your job. But how are they supposed to legally enforce it? How are you supposed to legally fight this when all the courts are closed because you're not allowed to go into the courts anymore either? What happens when we are in a state of total and 100% lockdown? You aren't even allowed to leave your house. Right now they're imposing this social distancing thing to try and help curb the spread of the virus. What happens for all these people that are coming back from foreign countries and they arrive back to no food in their fridge? Do you really think they stocked up on groceries if they were going to be gone in Spain for 2 weeks? So now they get back to the airport and they sign some legal document that states that they're going to self-isolate, and then they go home and find that there's no food in the fridge. What, do you expect them to just starve for 2 weeks? No, they're going to break that social distancing mandate that they agreed to. They need to go to the grocery store to get milk and eggs and bread because otherwise they're going to starve. And now what are you going to do? Go shoot them in the street because they broke their 2 weeks of self-isolation? Now, not everyone is going to suffer here. Not everyone is going to lose their job. Not everyone is going to get sick and die. Some people do have job security. If you're part of essential services like fire and police, if you're part of the medical system, then you have a pretty good job security at this time. But you always had good job security if you were a doctor. The country has always been in a shortage of doctors, so you've never had to worry about losing your job before. If you're part of the military, then you're definitely going to have job security because they keep you on for 20 or 25 years, and they're especially going to need you if the whole world goes to war. The last time there was a major world recession, now, the last time there was a recession in the States in 2008 when the housing bubble collapsed, that was primarily just the Americans that kind of suffered from that. The rest of the world did because it was based on the American economy. But the last time in 1929 that a worldwide recession happened, it led to World War II. And these are the things that I think a lot of people aren't really thinking about. What's going to happen to your job if we enter World War III because of this? The stock market in the last 3 weeks has dropped 30%. That is 4 years worth of economic growth. What happens when they hit 50 and 60 and 70% of the entire market is wiped out? These are just some things that I think that you really need to be thinking about here in terms of job security and where the future leads, what you're going to have in the future for potential opportunities. So this is about all I have for this rant at this moment. I'm going to be making more videos in the future on certain topics of jobs during the recession. But for now, I want to thank you for watching the video, and until then, I'll see you in the next.